All right. God bless everybody. Pastor Will here. We are live, and I want to welcome you all to this discussion tonight with some awesome people. And we're going to have a great time tonight. And I want you all to use the chat. Those of you that are uh, um, actually in the session, please feel free to use the chat if you have questions, and we will save those till the end. But we're going to be hearing tonight, and I want you to know why I'm sponsoring this. A couple of weeks ago, I took my first. I think I got to do two. The Novavax vaccine shot for COVID-19. I did my research, learned a little bit about it, and I'm not telling anybody to go take the shot. I'm telling everybody to go learn about it. We want to dispel some rumors tonight, and we want to, well, I heard that my uncle took it and he turned into a zombie. Oh, okay, I don't. But we want to dispel some of that on tonight. And so this is my desire to get the information out. I'm actually not only did I take the shot, but I'm actually participating in a study. I felt like I was talking to someone earlier, and they were making the point that, well, who have they tested it on? Well, when it comes to Novavax, I'm gonna know they tested it on me. But I want you all to learn, so please feel free. Those of you that have already joined in, please feel free to ask questions. But I see some of you all are starting to come in on the participation list. But I have some great people here, and I'm gonna have them introduce themselves. We have Noshima Darden Tab, Yersin Padilla, and of course, Dr. Cindy Gay. So in that order, if you all would just take a minute and just tell us who you are and why you're on here tonight.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Nashima, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager for our Clinical Trials Unit at UNC, where we do both HIV and COVID clinical trials. I'm really excited about this opportunity to talk with you all and share this information with you tonight.
Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Hey, everyone. My name is Yersin Padilla. I'm the bilingual community outreach educator. I recently joined the Clinical Trials Unit here at UNC. I'm really excited to talk to everyone, and thanks for having me here tonight. And I'm also on here to answer questions. I'm on the chat too, so thank you.
All right.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy Gay. I am a physician. I see patients in both a clinic and in the hospital. And my other job is as a clinical trials researcher. So I help oversee and put together and conduct clinical trials at UNC. Have been doing it for about 15 years. I am a physician. I see patients. And I'm really happy and honored to be here to share a little bit about what we've been doing and what we've learned with you tonight. So thanks so much.
Okay. Well, very good. And thank you all for introducing yourselves. And I'm just going to be here kind of as a facilitator. I'm also a participant in the Novavax vaccine. And so that may come up as part of the presentation tonight. But I want you all to feel comfortable, those that are participating in the webinar, and also those of you that are on Facebook. I'll try to bounce back and forth to pick up any questions that you all may have and post them, and we'll have our panelists answer those as we get towards the end of the presentation. So Dr. Cindy, I'm gonna let you drive, and we're gonna move forward.
Great. Yeah, we do have a couple slides over. And before I get started, I just wanted to make one comment because I know probably most of you don't know me. We have had roles in 2 of the clinical trials with the COVID-19 vaccines, but I just wanted to state up front that I'm not particularly invested in any of these vaccines. I would be happy if they were all found to be effective. And these are just the 2 that were that we were able to conduct at UNC. So I have no particular financial or anything on investment in these companies or the vaccines themselves. I consider this a service role that I'm doing. So I'm going to pull up some slides, and then as Pastor Nichols mentioned, we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Oh, me. All right. Nashima, you want to start off?
Okay. All right. So everyone, good evening. Once again, we're going to talk with you tonight about understanding COVID-19 vaccines and how they work in the body. And of course, we've already introduced ourselves, so we're going to move on to the next slide. So we're gonna, the objectives is to review vaccines in general. So just get a general understanding of how vaccines actually work in the body. What do they do whenever we receive a vaccine? We will highlight the current vaccines that are currently available under emergency use authorization, which are the messenger RNA vaccines developed by Pfizer and Mrna. And then we will talk a little bit about the Novavax vaccine and the research study, and hopefully answer your questions that you may have. And then at the end, share some links and resources and our contact information. Next slide. So we are part of the UNC Global HIV Prevention and Treatment Clinical Trials Unit, which is a very long name. And then this summer we added to that UNC COVID Research Response. So those are our two main areas that we provide research for. Our unit has been in existence for over 30 years. We have both private industry clinical trials. We focus on treatment, cure, and prevention for HIV. And we're affiliated with major research networks that includes the AIDS Clinical Trials Group, the HIV Prevention and Vaccine Trial Group, as well as the newly formed COVID-19 Coronavirus Prevention website, Coronavirus Prevention Network, excuse me. And of course, we have a very diverse team of nurses, doctors, social worker, we have regulatory staff, and we have different backgrounds with regard to education, and we all work together with regard to our research agenda. And at this time, Cindy's going to take over these slides, and she said that this is a service, and yes, she is a physician, but I want you all to really understand that she also has protocol chair responsibilities with some of the protocols, and being a lead principal investigator for the COVID vaccine trials at UNC is tremendous. So this is who you have that will be sharing this information with you from the remainder of the presentation.
Thanks, Nashima. Before I sort of get into the specifics of the COVID-19 vaccine trials and the vaccines themselves, I like to step back and think big picture, particularly in regards to vaccines just in general. Vaccines have literally saved hundreds of millions of lives since they were created. They are probably single-handedly the most important preventer of childhood death under mortality and preventing infections that cause a lot of severe illness and death across the world. And here on this figure, on the slide that you see in front of you, it's just kind of to highlight that point. The CDC did 2 studies and looked at, in the decade of 1990 to 1998, in the span of about 10 years in the early 2000s, the top public health achievements in both of those decades were vaccinations. So again, it's just taking for a minute to think about how trusted, how effective, how much our, you know, as a community across the globe, our lives have been improved by these. And keeping in mind as well that a lot of the vaccine benefit is provided by the vaccines that we give to infants and children. So these are in some ways, or many ways, the most vulnerable in regards to health and risk, I would say. So again, just a plug for how trusted, how safe we know vaccines can be and how effective they can be. So let's talk a little bit about vaccines. One of the things that I think sometimes gets missed with vaccines is that there are really 2 big picture benefits. There's the benefit of taking a safe and effective vaccine to the individual. So for a lot of the vaccines, they either prevent infection altogether, or if someone gets infected, they have less severe illness, as we sometimes see with the flu. So there's that individual benefit to having received the vaccine. But there's a second, even in some ways, a greater benefit, that there's the benefit to your community. Meaning is that as an individual, and most of us move through different communities in our lives, if you think about it, you've got your church community, you've got your work community, you've got your family, your friends, your neighborhood. And if you have taken a vaccine that prevents you from getting infected, that means that you're not going to get infected and potentially pass it along to someone else. So when you have an effective vaccine that gets distributed and administered to enough people within a community, you reduce transmission within that community. So you have a healthier community. You have people who are not sick. They're not having to stay home from work. They're not having to stay home to take care of loved ones. And life can go on. And in the setting of this global tragedy of COVID-19, I think we all could agree that getting to a better place where our communities are healthier and we're protected ourselves would be so much better. So again, I like, maybe I like to hit home and be quite direct. I know one of the things people worry a lot about with vaccines, and I talk a lot about this with my patients in clinic. Can the vaccine, any kind of vaccine, cause illness? And in the case of these COVID-19 vaccines that are in studies in the United States, none of them are able to cause COVID-19 illness. This is because the way that the vaccines are designed, they are only really presenting one small protein of the coronavirus to your immune system. It's not even several parts of the virus. It's only one small protein that has nothing to do with making more SARS-CoV-2 virus. So none of these vaccines, the Pfizer, Mrna, and any of the other ones that you may have heard about in the news, can actually cause COVID-19 illness. So hopefully that's reassuring to a lot of people, but an important point to make sure everybody understands. So listen, on this slide, you'll see these are all of the COVID-19 vaccines that are in, we call them human clinical trials in the United States. And they're sort of grouped, the top two, if you look in the second column from the left, the Moderna and Pfizer are grouped together because they're both what we call a messenger RNA or mRNA vaccines. They got started a little bit earlier than the other ones just because those vaccines are a little bit easier to make. They're a bit easier to adapt from one type of vaccine that was made for another virus to the COVID-19 virus, or SARS-CoV-2 virus, sorry. And then there's also other studies, the AstraZeneca and Johnson, you may have heard about those in the news. And then the last one is made by Novavax. The two that are kind of highlighted in red rectangles are the two COVID-19 vaccines that are being tested at UNC. So I will talk a little bit more about those. And again, I'm not personally invested, I just happen to be directly involved with these. The one thing I want to say about all of these vaccines that are listed on the slide is, again, they are all trying to elicit an immune response to the same target from the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And I'll talk about this in a little bit more, but it's this one small protein that sits on the outside. So to some degree, or to a large degree, the fact that the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines have been found to be very effective, and frankly, more effective than we ever could have hoped for, is very reassuring and promising for the other COVID-19 vaccines that you see listed on the side, because they're all trying to elicit an immune response to the same target. So we're very hopeful that some of the other ones are also going to be found to be safe and effective. So I'm not going to try to get too nerdy on you, but sometimes I think a visual is a lot easier to understand what it is these vaccines are actually trying to do. In the sort of picture on your left, the yellow circle that sort of looks like it's fuzzy on the outside, that is a very magnified picture of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And in the little square or white square box, it's highlighting this one protein that's called the spike protein sits on the outside of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. This spike protein is very important to the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And to the right, you see where some very smart people, who are smarter than I am, were able to figure out what the actual structure of that spike protein is. And then they were even able to sequence and know how to make it and rebuild it in a laboratory setting. So knowing early on what the structure and being able to figure out what the spike protein looked like and what it did on the for the SARS-CoV-2 virus was very important. And it's this spike protein that is the target for all of these COVID-19 vaccines that I just showed you. I'm going to show you a little bit more about what I'm talking about. So here in this figure, the big purple blob on the left is the coronavirus. And what you see in the sort of multicolored triangle right here is the spike protein, just a depiction of that. This spike protein is what the SARS-CoV-2 virus uses to attach to a receptor that you see there on the right on the outside of our human cells. All viruses have to get inside to our cells in order to make more virus. It's that making more virus that causes infection, that causes us to feel sick. So it's very important to the SARS-CoV-2 virus that the spike protein is able to bind to receptor, get inside our cells, and kind of do its thing. So what if you're able to reproduce just that one protein that sits on the outside, right? It's not making more virus, it's just helping the virus get inside our cells. So what smart people did was they recreated that in a lab, and they present it to the immune system through this vaccine. The different vaccines gets packaged kind of differently. That's the way I would think about it. So what's different across those different vaccines is how they're packaged, but they're all presenting this one protein. Your immune system sees that one protein is like, hey, this is not human. This is not supposed to be here, and starts responding. And the most important response is that it makes antibodies, and it makes antibodies that are specific to that spike protein that bind to it. And that's what you see in this figure. There are these proteins that look like sort of purple and green Ys that now attach to the spike protein itself. So your immune system produces these antibodies in response to the vaccine. And then as you're walking around in life, if you get exposed to the actual SARS-CoV-2 virus, you already have these antibodies floating around in your blood and even in your tissues. And that way that the antibodies see the virus, they bind to it. And now, as you can see in the picture, that spike protein is not able to attach. It's not able to even connect with the receptor, and it can't get inside our cells, and it can't cause infection, can't make us sick or make us as sick. So getting back to that whole idea of there's the individual to the person if they're protected by a vaccine, but what about this idea of how it protects the community? So you may have heard of herd immunity before, which I don't really like that term so much. So I'm going to use population immunity. So here's the idea. You have this large group of people in blue. That means they don't have immunity. They don't have any antibodies to the SARS-CoV-2 virus. SARS-CoV-2 comes around, gets introduced into that community. And sure enough, and I would say SARS-CoV-2 has fairly high transmission in close quarters. You end up with all the people in green who've been infected. Some of them maybe didn't have any symptoms. Some of them had some mild symptoms. Some of them got really sick. Some of them got admitted to the hospital, and unfortunately, some of them will die. And you have all these few people in blue. They were lucky enough. They didn't get infected, and they still don't make any antibodies. Here's the same idea. There's a community hasn't seen SARS-CoV-2 yet. It gets introduced. Some people get infected. Some people don't. Some people recover and do okay. Some people don't. But what if you could do something else? What if through a vaccine that presents that one protein on the outside, your immune system responds, it starts making antibodies such that you skip this whole period of having to see the virus, get sick, have people have to go to the hospital, and you end up with people who have antibodies and are protected. That's the idea of population immunity. That's how we can prevent transmission and illness with widespread use of these vaccines. So let's talk about the elephant in the room a little bit. I would say as a clinician and researcher, we have to now, when you do research studies, learn about our past mistakes. And I would be the last person to defend any of the not so great things we've done in the past in regards to research studies on vulnerable and minority populations. I'm hoping that this pandemic can be, or one of the good things about the pandemic is it can make us do a better job. I think we have a moral and ethical obligation with these vaccine studies to reach out to the communities that are being highly impacted. And I think most of us recognize that to a large degree, some of those communities have been Black and brown communities, as well as those over the age of 65. At UNC, we have taken that commitment very seriously, meaning that we feel, as we're talking to you tonight, that it's our sort of role to describe what these COVID-19 vaccines are, what we're doing in these studies, why we're doing it, and let people make their own decision about whether they might want to participate or just know a little bit more, such that if we're lucky enough that the vaccines are found to be safe and effective, that they're ready to go and step up and hopefully benefit individually and benefit their community. So we're trying to do a better job. I would say what we've learned from some of our past mistakes, and you may have heard about the Tuskegee incident and some of the Henrietta Lacks, not so great experiences, is that we have a lot of practices in place to keep us from doing not so great a job. So now we have things like informed consent, where before you can participate in a study, you have to read what most people would say is a very long, boring document that describes exactly what you're going to be asked to do in the study, how many visits, what's going to happen to you, how many shots you're going to get, are you going to have blood drawn, how many times, and what are the risks involved with all of those things. So people can make an informed decision about, is this something that I want to do, that I can do I have the time, do I want to accept that risk, even of one thing, and make a decision. There are also several groups that oversee clinical trials now. So we have review boards at each institution. Sometimes we have central review boards that look over protocols and decide, are there enough safety measures in place to really oversee and make things go as slowly as they should, and take care of the people in the study in the way that they should. We also have what we call a lot of good clinical practices. So a lot of steps that we have to follow, a lot of procedures. So all of that is to say that I think we hopefully have learned a lot about what didn't go great in the past to implement and have a lot of measures in place that would prevent such a thing from happening again. So I hate the term Operation Warp Speed, but I like this figure a lot. So I'm going to walk you through it really quickly. I've gotten a lot of questions about that these COVID-19 vaccine trials are going too fast. Are they safe? What steps are being missed? And so I'm going to pare this down pretty quickly to explain and hopefully reassure you. The top sort of middle bar that has many different colors goes through what it's describing as the typical process for development of a vaccine. And it's broken it down into sort of the stages by the color. So the dark blue is sort of the preclinical. So studies that would be done on animals and also in the lab. And then the sort of next blue color would be the phase 1 studies, where you're looking at safety in a small number of people, trying to find the right dose, et cetera. And then a lighter blue would be phase 2, the even lighter blue, phase 3, the kind of, I don't know what color that is, it's sort of dishwater brown, would be the manufacturing. So the point I want to make is that if you go to the next sort of bar below it, yes, the process has been condensed. Yes, it is shorter, but all of those colors are still there. It is just not possible to get to a phase 3 trial with anything, but including a COVID-19 vaccine, without going through all these steps. It's not possible. The FDA and other groups have to look at each step, all the data that's from the preclinical studies, from the phase 1 and the phase 2, before moving forward with the next phase. The way that things have been condensed so much for COVID-19 is, frankly, for the last several decades, we've been trying to get an HIV vaccine. It's a much trickier vaccine, but we've learned a lot. We've advanced technology a lot. We also have had at UNC in North Carolina 2 investigators who are internationally known now for coronavirus research, who have been working since the SARS outbreak, and the MERS, and were able to adapt some of what they've learned quite quickly. And also, we took vaccine strategies, platforms, companies that were developing vaccines and the way that they package them for other viruses, and quickly adapted them to try to address this one. All of that allowed things to happen quicker. Frankly, what also helped a lot was back early in the pandemic, a lot of people coming together that normally don't work together and deciding this is a big problem. We've got to all come together. We've got to put up the funding in order to make things happen. And literally people, and this I can personally attest to, working 7 days a week, sometimes into the evenings, to make things happen. The other thing that's helped a lot, unfortunately, is because we have so much infection that when we have these studies start enrolling, they're very large. We're enrolling on the average 30,000 participants in each study. And because there's so many cases in the community, we've been able to get the data we need to be able to determine whether one single vaccine is effective or not. So again, big picture, none of the steps are being missed. Some of them are overlapping a little bit. A lot of this is being addressed by people working really hard, funding up front. And as you can tell, that murky brown manufacturing part has been happening at risk since the very beginning without really knowing whether the vaccines would be effective or not, but wanting to be able to produce them quickly if they were. So just kind of in summary, these are the two clinical trials, the two vaccines that have been, the studies have been conducted at UNC. All of the studies really sort of have the same design. We call them phase 3, which means that we're trying to determine if they're effective. They're randomized, meaning that there's some people will get the active vaccine, some get a placebo. That's the best way to find out if something's effective or not. And they're blinded, meaning at UNC, we don't know who gets what. And that allows us to treat everybody the same and really determine whether the symptoms that some people have are related to vaccine or just what happens in life sometimes. Both of these vaccines are very similar to the others. They're 2 injections about 3 to 4 weeks apart. As I mentioned, these studies are enrolling a lot of people, 30,000 participants in both. And we're just trying to determine whether the vaccine can prevent people having symptoms related to COVID-19. Most of the sites are in the US. And the Mrna study, I'm going to toot the horn of my team a little bit. We enrolled from August to sort of late October. We enrolled 174 participants. And as I mentioned, we were committed to making the participation in our study at UNC diverse. So we had 26% of our participants were Hispanic, 28% were Black. We had slightly over 1% American Indian and 13% who were over the age of 65. The Novavax vaccine study, it's a different type of packaging of the vaccine. It's what we call protein-based vaccine. It's a strategy that's been around a lot longer. There are a lot of vaccines that use this and are approved, and my kids and your kids are probably have received them. We opened at UNC on December 20, or the study opened on December 27th, and we're still enrolling. We're about halfway to the number of participants that we need. And really the big picture at this point is we just are trying to enroll people who are at risk for exposure to COVID-19, either because they have a job where they have to show up, or because they live with someone who has a job that involves contact with others, or for a variety of other reasons that I think a lot of us are familiar with now. I think we did. Nashima, did we decide we were going to let you talk about this, or do you want me to? I can't remember.
Oh, no, you can. The links don't work. It's just the pictures of the different things that we've done and the people that stepped up to do videos and articles, etc.
Yeah, so I would say one of the things like early on, and we've touched on a little bit, was trying to provide some reassurance to people that these studies were being done in a safe way, that none of the steps were being missed. And also, I think trying to address, our lack of really reaching out to Black and Brown communities in the past to participate in research or even just know about it. So we thought it was important to have some people who are enrolling on the study talk about why they would do it, have people who enrolling in the study look like those who we were reaching out to, and sort of look like me sort of approach. And we had some really fabulous people who did that. Your own Pastor Nichols is right there, and hopefully he might want to talk a little bit more about it. But down in the bottom left is Ralph Barrick. He is probably one of the most renowned scientists on coronavirus. He, certainly knows about all of these vaccines, and he stepped up and said, yeah, I want to be on the study, and did a video about that. We were really quite honored. Dr. Craig Cameron is the head of microbiology at UNC. He's also a researcher. He knows a lot. He knows a lot about research, and was willing also to participate. Dr. Keisha Gibson is just absolutely fantastic. She's a pediatric nephrologist, but at UNC, she also has a role in addressing equity issues at the university. And then Ernest Grant, who I should say Dr. Ernest Grant, he does have his PhD. He was a nurse in the burn unit at UNC for decades, and has retired, but taken another job and is the president of the American Nurses Association. And he also took some time to talk with others about why he felt it was important to be on a study. So I'm sure I've forgotten some things that I wanted to say, but hopefully this is some useful information to all of you to feel a little bit better about, what everybody keeps saying, the accelerated pace. But really, I think it's more of I guess what I would ask people to look at it as, I'm personally grateful that so many have done so much, that we know that we have 2 safe and effective vaccines, the Moderna and Pfizer. I just finished or got my 2nd dose of the vaccine last week. I can tell you my mom's in her late 80s and has dementia, and my dad told me she signed the vaccine, and a huge wave of relief just went through me that she was going to do that. So I'll stop talking because I normally don't talk so much, and take some questions.
Thank you, Dr. Cindy. If you could, are we through with the slides? Yeah, very good. It's a couple of ways. So we have questions from our participants here on the Zoom webinar, but we also have a much larger audience on Facebook Live who are also asking questions. And so we want to kind of go back and forth. And I noticed that Nashima was answering some of the questions that were being posted in the Q&A on the within the Zoom, but we want her to ask and answer those questions because the people on Facebook would not have seen the responses or the answers to those questions. But I want to start out first, and I want you to help us, and I guess I'll start with you, Dr. Cindy, because I started taking the flu vaccine about 5 years ago. Now, but for years I didn't take it because, I'd heard, no, if you take it, you'll get the flu from it. And I know somebody who took the flu and they got sick. And so I just went and asked my doctor, and she gave me some responses. And now I'm starting to hear similar stories about the COVID-19. I've heard where somebody took the vaccine and now they got COVID-19. Somebody else took the vaccine and now they've died. And in my mind, I'm saying, well, you can't look at coincidence versus causality. But can you talk to that for a minute? Because people are going to hear, well, I heard someone took the COVID-19 vaccine and now they got COVID-19.
Yeah, so it's just not possible to get COVID-19 from the vaccine itself. It's certainly possible that, because for the studies and in practice now with the EUA vaccines, we're not testing people to find out if they've been exposed to COVID, or even if they haven't. They could have gotten it and not have the symptoms yet. So it's certainly possible that someone could get the vaccine and then be in the process of just being exposed to somebody and then go on to develop COVID-19. It takes several weeks really for the vaccine and for the immune response to develop, and for then a number of antibodies to be present. And we give 2 doses of the vaccine because we find that giving a 2nd dose improves the immune responses. So really it's about 2 weeks after that 2nd dose where people have sort of the full protection. So up until that point, if someone's exposed to COVID-19, they could still get sick and have the symptoms. So you have to wait a while after getting a vaccine for the protection to be there. I would say with the Moderna and Pfizer, we did show they were very effective, 94 to 95% effective in preventing people from having symptoms related to COVID, but that's not 100%, right? It's a really good, it's a home run several times over in vaccines, but it's not 100%. There are very few things in life that are 100%.
Okay.
For sure.
Saying this earlier, but what you're saying emphatically is you don't get COVID-19 from taking the vaccine. No. It just introduces a protein that creates a response. Anybody who does get COVID-19, they either already had it or was exposed to it at some point.
Correct.
All right. Very good. And Nashima, can you go over some of the questions that you have already answered?
Yeah, sorry about that too. I started answering and I said, maybe I better not answer it anymore. So one of the questions was, what's the best place to visit to get a shot in the RDU area? And right now, the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services are allocating the vaccine to different locales via area hospitals, so large hospital systems, and then area health departments. So you have to be age 65 or older and be one of the healthcare worker categories to receive the vaccine right now for the ones that are released under the emergency use agreement or emergency use authorization. So that's those particular vaccines. Cindy, you want to say anything more about that?
No, I think you covered it. That was great.
I know that it is quite hectic. There's a lot of people since it opened up to 65 who are trying to get resources and information for their families. And on our last slide, we do have it, but the name of the program at, if you go to ncdhhs.gov, it's called Find Your Spot. And each county is listed on the website, and you can see all the places that are allocated to have vaccine and provide vaccine in the counties, each county.
Yeah, I have several Facebook questions that are some similar related. Someone says, why is it taking so long for elderly patients to get an appointment? We have our mom who's been waiting for 2 weeks and she's 94. Another person says, are there enough doses available for individuals with underlying conditions? I'm finding family members still cannot get the vaccine. I don't know if there's any more you want to add to that, Nashima.
I can. I'll defer to Cindy first. She
Okay.
probably will have a better answer than what I have for that.
Yeah, I don't have the highest level information about, but I do know that they're trying very hard to increase the availability of the vaccines at different places. And I do certainly understand everyone's frustration with not being able to do it yet. I am a big picture kind of person, very practical. So I guess sometimes when I even feeling that frustration for, my friends and family, et cetera, is to step back and think about, well, what if the 2 vaccines had not been found to be safe and effective? We would be facing this winter and the numbers that we're seeing without even the hope and being able to stand in line and get a vaccine. So I guess I would say let's try to be grateful that we have 2 that we do know work and are safe. I'm hopeful that they're going to be able to figure out some of these kinks in the distribution. I think the other hope that we have is that, as I mentioned, the two other vaccine studies with AstraZeneca and Johnson, they finished their enrollment. I think we are anticipating hearing something about the safety and effectiveness of these 2 vaccines. So it's possible we could have 2 more in the near future. And there's no doubt 3 is better than 2, 4 is better than 3, 5 would be better than 4. So as I mentioned, I'm hoping that at least a few more of these will be found to be safe and effective and allow the vaccines to be available to everybody a lot quicker.
Okay. Ebony says, if you have allergies, can you still receive the vaccine?
You certainly can. They have seen, I think it's mostly with the Pfizer vaccine that some folks have had what we would call sort of severe allergic reactions. And they tended to be people who had a history of severe reactions to vaccines or other things. That doesn't mean that those people can't. I would say if anyone has had that experience before, I would talk to your physician. And if and when you decide to go to the vaccine, just make sure the people who know are going to give it are prepared. And, in the cases of their allergic reactions with the Pfizer, all the individuals did fine. Some of them went and got some treatment, but most of them didn't have to be hospitalized and, went to the emergency room or urgent care and then were sent home. So it's just a matter of being prepared, but do talk to your physician and make sure that they think it's an okay thing for you to do.
Okay. Nashima, do you have any additional questions?
So the other question was specifically, will you automatically be immune to the virus once you take the vaccine in its full dose? And I think Cindy kind of answered that one already, that it would take the second dose about 2 weeks before you have full immunity. But another part of the question that was in there, Cindy, if you could speak to how long does the immunity last? And I know there's no guarantee that you will not get COVID again, but if you can speak to maybe the immunity of the vaccine.
Yeah, it's a great question. We really don't know the durability of the immune responses, and that's one of the things that the studies are designed to look at. So for example, people enrolled in the studies are asked to stay on the study for up to 2 years. And the reason to do that really is so we can measure, how long do these antibody levels stay sort of where we think they need to be. So we will have more information about that as we get farther along on the studies. And to get back to the point, it does appear that it's about 2 weeks after the second dose where you have sort of what we call the most protection you're going to get. But as we've all learned, individuals vary a lot from person to person. And as I mentioned, in the studies, the vaccines were not 100% protective, very good. But in the near future, even if those who are listening to me get the vaccine, it's still really important that even after the 2 weeks of the second dose, you're still wearing a mask, still doing the social distancing until we can kind of get to, remember that figure I showed where we have enough people in the community who've been vaccinated and protected. So we're just in a better place.
Okay, I have a few more questions here on Facebook. One from Cheryl. How soon can you take the vaccine after taking the COVID test? And let me add to that, because I know when I was participating, I had taken the flu shot, but they wanted me to be a certain amount of time away from taking the flu shot. And I was also thinking about taking the not the measles or the mumps. What's the other one?
The
Maybe?
Zosters, the one for the
For the
Zosters.
old folks.
Yes.
For me,
I know I can't, I'm forgetting too, because I had the same dilemma. The one for Zosters to prevent the Zosters I forget.
Yeah, I think you could.
Shingles, thank you.
Yeah, you don't need to wait for a result
Elizabeth is there.
of a COVID test before getting vaccinated. I think even on the studies and even folks who have had COVID before, they're still recommending that those folks get vaccinated. So the timing of that is really not an issue. In the clinical trials, we did ask that people delay coming on to the studies and getting the COVID-19 vaccine, at least for a week after getting the flu shot. That's not really so much because of a safety concern that there would be any sort of interaction. It's just so that we wouldn't confuse any side effects from the flu shot as being related to the COVID-19. Because there are some, really the side effects or symptoms, if you will, that we see with people with these COVID-19 vaccines are really some of the same side effects you can get with any vaccine. And some vaccines tend to cause some more than others.
Okay. Okay, so I guess you answered that question. How soon can someone take the vaccine after having COVID-19? If you already had COVID-19, several questions. Do you still need to take the vaccine? I think you said yes. My husband and I both had COVID-19. We both still have some side effects. Will the vaccine help reduce the effects?
That's an interesting one. I don't know that they will. I think they would certainly, hopefully protect you from getting reinfected, which it sounds like would be a good thing. We have seen some people who have COVID-19 who do take a while to get over the symptoms. It does appear that most do. It's just, I think sometimes a frustratingly slow process, but there's a lot of, variability in individuals who've had it, but hopefully that you'll recover soon at some point.
I think I've heard this on the news, but what about children 5 and under?
We don't have any data yet, but there are, I do know that there are people who are working to develop those protocols so that we could find out. This is just my opinion, not based on data, but my feeling is that these vaccines will be safe and effective in children as well. But you generally like to show safety and efficacy in adults before trying new vaccines in children. They have lowered the age of some of the trials to age 12 and 16. So we'll have some data on the safety and efficacy in adolescents fairly soon.
All right. And yes, Kathy, I was thinking about shingles. She was actually, Pastor, were you thinking about the shingles? Yeah, I was going to take that, but I just held off until I got through my test for Novavax. So is there any other questions anybody have either on our participants in Zoom or else in Facebook? I got they're popping in. Which vaccine is given at UNC? I think you answered that already. Moderna and Novavax. Is that correct, doctor?
Well, those are the vaccines we were studying in clinical
Study.
trials.
Okay.
Yeah, right now, the two vaccines that are available through the emergency use authorization are the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you, I know you talked about this a little bit earlier, but I just want to go over it again because it was a big question of mine because a lot of people were like, hold on, they came out with that vaccine too early. I heard it's supposed to take 10 years, 5 years, and it was political. So I did a little research, but can you reiterate that about the RNA or mRNA vaccines and how they were built on the platforms of others?
Yeah, the messenger RNA vaccines, they are a relatively newer, I would say, technology or way of packaging the vaccines. It's quite clever. But these are not, the mRNA COVID-19 vaccines are not the first. So they were using that mRNA strategy to develop vaccines for other viruses and even for cancer therapy. So there was experience for early phase studies with that approach, with that strategy. And it is a strategy that really allows the people who make the vaccines to sort of pivot from developing it for one vaccine to switching it to COVID-19. So I would say there was safety data in early phase studies, but none of those mRNA vaccines had made it to sort of licensure yet. So they took really that early, sort of that combined early safety data, preclinical efficacy data that they had, and decided that it would be a good idea to see if it would work for COVID-19. So it was, again, but the same steps having to go back to doing the studies in animals first, doing studies in the lab, doing the phase 1, phase 2 specifically for COVID. So all those steps happened.
What did, were there steps that get eliminated as a result of warp speed?
Oh, I think there were a tremendous number of COVID-19 vaccines that were presented as options. I was not involved at that early a stage in the whole process, so I couldn't speak to how many there were. I think they did make the decisions based on what we would call the immune responses. You can measure those in you can measure them in cells, you can measure them in animals, and in the phase 1, also they would give the vaccines and measure what the antibody levels were in humans. And I think it was based on both safety and those responses that we saw, the ones that they decided to move forward. So based on those two things, which are the most important, safety and effectiveness.
Okay, I have a few other questions that have popped up here. And I don't think this is a rumor. Ashley said there's a rumor going around about a new strand of COVID-19. Is that true? And I've been hearing that there are several strands. Does the vaccine provide protection for it?
Yeah, there are several, so what we call variants, but that's not surprising. We know viruses, we use the word mutate, but they change a little bit as they make more virus. So it's not too surprising. The general feeling amongst people who are experts in vaccines, much more so than even I am, I shouldn't say that, much more so than I am, are that we do think that these vaccines are still going to be effective because of how important the target is. Remember, they're all targeting the spike protein that has to some degree, maintain its shape to be able to attach to our cells and get in. So I would say across the board, people are not too concerned that the vaccines won't work, but there are several scientists and several labs across the United States who are going to look at this specifically and testing it, so we'll know. I think regardless that we would have these studies and continue the use of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine because those variants are not the most widespread variants. They're existing. They may become more prevalent, or there may be more of them in the community, but right now they're not the most common.
Okay. How long has mRNA been around? And then another question, are there risks of cancer?
I don't know the first time a mRNA vaccine was developed, but they have, when I say they're relatively new, they've been around for many years. And so I would say they're newer to us. I think they're newer to us as, you know, recipients of a vaccine, but it's been a technology that's been around for quite some time. So I'm sorry, I don't have an exact date, but it's not brand new. I guess that's maybe the simplest way to answer it. The RNA, it doesn't have the capability of incorporating into our DNA, because messenger RNA doesn't go into the nucleus. It stays in what we call the area of the cell that's the cytoplasm. So it doesn't have that capacity. Messenger RNA is something that's in all of our cells. It's what our cells use to make more protein, sort of as repair, for regenerating, for doing all the things that our cells and our body needs to do on a regular basis. And the messenger RNA itself is temporary. So it degrades on its own and goes away. And the same is true for the messenger RNA that's in these vaccines. It's temporary, doesn't stick around, doesn't incorporate into our DNA. So it can't cause cancer because it can't incorporate into our DNA.
Okay. I read somewhere, no, it at least dates back to SARS back in 2003, right?
That sounds about right. Yeah, I didn't want to say a date and not.
Okay. Just something I read, so I would just,
Yeah.
it may have been before or after that, but I just wanted to know. And I saw a couple more. Is there a cost associated with taking the vaccine? And to Malcolm, I think we did answer the question that about whether or not you should take it if you've already had COVID-19. I think the answer was yes to that one. But what about the cost?
There is no cost for the Pfizer Moderna vaccines that are approved for EUA. And as I have heard on a few calls and meetings I've been in, that there would be no cost for additional ones that they get approved by EUA as well.
Okay. Well, I thank you all for your time. I don't know if there's any additional information you all wanted to share, Nashima or Yerson. Dr. Cindy, we certainly appreciate you. Nia just came on at the last minute. After you had COVID-19, what are the noted effects of the body that can be long-term? And I've heard a lot of different things: lung conditions, breathing conditions. Anybody want to jump in on that? And then just anything you all want to share before we get off.
Yeah, I would say, you know, there is certain variability in how COVID-19 affects people. And I would say even those who have to come to the hospital, the thing that's or the impact on the body does vary. So I think it's going to depend on, you know, how it affected individuals to begin with. But again, I think the overall, although for some people there's a long recovery, that recovery does happen. So that's the hope that I would provide.
Okay. Elizabeth DuBose is making, hopefully she sent this. She says if there's anybody that wants to reach out, you can reach out to Elizabeth DuBose. I am posting her information, her email, in the comments, both on Facebook, which we have quite a few people watching there, and also I'm going to post it here to those that are attending. And if she didn't mean for me to do that, it's too late now, Elizabeth. Everybody got your information. But that's why we're here, to get information to you. So if you all have any questions, please feel free to reach out. There was somebody, they're not on tonight, but they did ask me, what if they want to, and I don't know if Elizabeth can answer this or if anyone of you all, what if they want to participate in the study? What if somebody that's watching want to participate? I think someone asked me that at church on Sunday. Should they just reach out to Elizabeth or what?
So if people are interested in actually participating in Novavax, because time is of the essence. We're halfway through 30,000 people and it will go really quickly. They may email Elizabeth at the email provided. The other option is you may send me a text. If you act quickly, send a text to my cell phone number, which is 919-539-9895. And I see I typed it wrong in there. I See, I
I'm
typed it
getting ready to
wrong.
cut and paste it on
I'll
Facebook.
retype it. But if you would type Novavax interest, okay, then I will call you back, get your information, and link you directly to Eliza. Eliza is
Rashima, give me your number again.
919
Yep,
539
539.
9895.
All right.
Because there is a, you know, a process to getting pre-screened, getting you in, and making sure that slots are still available for people that are interested in that. And if you all just want future programming, please do feel free to reach out to us as well. My email is nashima@med.unc.edu, and Yerson, I'll have you put yours in the chat too. And anything else that you wanted to add, Yerson, with regard to reaching out to any Spanish speaking, et cetera?
Yeah, and definitely I wanted to make note of, somebody was asking a question in regards to transparency in terms of access to within the communities. The North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services and their website, if you do go to covid19.ncdhs.gov/dashboard/vaccinations, it actually shows you the numbers about in regards to vaccination between their first dose, second dose. Within North Carolina, it also looks in terms into demographic information. So if you want to look into that, that's definitely a great resource to check into. And then we're definitely aware that there are disparities between communities of color, specifically with immigrants or communities that, you know, English might not be their first language. And so we do provide that space if you're interested as well. And I will put my email down below. And again, thank you so much for listening, and y'all are amazing, so thanks.
Very good.
I just wanted to say thank you for having us, Pastor Wills. Thank you for your enthusiasm. Thank you for your energy and dedication to your congregation, as well as to the community at large, to want to do this, to want to AKA put yourself on blast to the community that you're participating in research, and as well as sharing the information and make sure that folks have the right information, and then they can make informed decisions about research or about accepting the COVID-19 vaccine. Thank you again so much.
All right. Anything else, Dr. Cindy?
I just want to, I have to ditto that. I really, you know, these are hard times, and it's really great when people in leadership positions like yourself, who people look to and trust, try to sort of quell some of the concern and the hesitance. And I just truly, in my heart of hearts, you know, believe that these vaccines are going to get us to a better place. So I really appreciate you trying to make them, you know, feel more normal, I guess.
All right. Well,
and
thank you
shout
all.
out to Eliza for making sure that she connects us with the folks that have the enthusiasm and energy like you. She is like spot on with sending people our way to say, you need to interview this person, you need to talk to this person. So Eliza, she's there in the background, but I wish she was up here too. But thank you so much, Eliza.
Well, very good. And thank
All
you
right.
again for your time. I think the information is great. We've got it recorded. It's on Facebook. So those of you that are on Facebook, please like and share this. Tag some folks. It's a lot of bad information out there. So I brought these professionals on to get the right information. Let's not live our lives based upon conspiracy theories or what you heard or what you saw. There's real information. And as I said, when all of this happened a year ago, let's not operate in fear, but let's operate in faith in God. Let's not operate in ignorance, but let's operate in knowledge. Let's get the knowledge. And these things are very important. And then let's not operate in defiance, but in obedience. Wear the mask, do the social distancing. I know I'm tired of looking at all y'all eyeballs. I forgot what y'all look like. I've been seeing eyeballs for so long, but we're gonna keep looking at them for a little while until somebody tell me, like Dr. Cindy, that the coast is clear. But until she tell me the coast is clear, we're gonna keep looking at eyeballs and all of that. Even once you get the vaccine, My understanding is we still want to continue to do that. And we're just going to trust God for all the rest. So thank you all again. Everybody that's streaming, every Dr. Cindy, Yerson, Noshima, y'all be blessed. Have a blessed evening. And thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Be safe, everyone.
All right.